This episode is sponsored by the Cornell S.E. Johnson College of Business. The Cornell Executive MBA Americas program is designed for goal achievers from any industry. The program works by advancing your career without interruption, by providing global perspectives and intimate classroom settings, and by challenging, informing, connecting, and propelling you. Achieve your goals with the Cornell Executive MBA Americas program on the weekend and close to home. Search Cornell EMBA Americas in my city today.
Welcome to the Ellevate podcast, conversations with women changing the face of business. And now your hosts, Maricella Herrera and Megan Oliver.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Ellevate podcast. I am your host, Maricella Herrera, and I'm here with Megan Oliver, who is down in Texas. How are you, Megan?
I'm good. I'm down in Texas. You know this because I just posted this in Slack, but it's getting very real because I have an appointment to see a car tomorrow.
Yeah, I just saw that message, which is why you're down in Texas was like kind of in my mind.
Top of mind. Yeah. No, it's so crazy. And it's from a used car. It looks like it's in good condition, and it looks like they have a few other options too, but you just never know with used cars. So we'll find out, in or at least listeners will find out in a few weeks how it worked out when they hear if I have a car or not.
Well, I cannot wait to see pictures and everything and hear about the new Texas lifestyle.
Oh
How it
yeah.
goes.
Oh yeah, excited, crazy, but fun. Fun and new. It's I kind of figured out once I got here that I really made the right choice. I was just so happy to be around family and just like the casualness of Monday. My brother comes to pick up cuz again, I'm staying with my parents, so and my parents watch Olivia Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So Monday, my brother comes to pick her up. And he just casually says, "Oh, what are you doing tonight, Megan?" I said, "I don't have any plans." I was literally just gonna like watch TV or something. And he goes, "Why don't you just come over to our house and watch the baseball game together?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." So like I can just hang out with my family, which is something I haven't really been able to do
Yeah.
um in New York, which is really cool. And also we're all 5 years older than I was when I left for New York, so we're all much more of adults. Like I was 25 and he was 20 when we left when I left for New York. So like it's much more chill. It's much more just like, yeah, come over, hang out, rather than, crazy early 20s.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to think about it in that way. But it's fun. I would like to see my family or, be around them more often. It's a lot harder
Yeah.
though.
No, it's hard. And I made that choice for 5 years. And I do think it was the right choice to make at the time. It's just that like I figured out that at this point in my life, the right choice is to be here
Yeah. Well, good
for
for
a
you.
multitude of reasons.
Really, really good for you.
Yeah.
Well, as you've been adapting to Texan lifestyle, I have still been antsy about not running.
Oh yeah. Yeah. How is that going?
It's driving me nuts. I was able to start running a few weeks ago, but I did just a little bit of run walk because I couldn't push my toes.
Hmm.
But like I mentioned briefly on the podcast, I went through an egg freezing cycle, and it is so hard in many ways to go through that. Although I can say I'm extremely lucky and privileged to be able to have done that. But I can't run. It's part of the thing.
Yeah. Oh my
So
gosh.
so I had like that little taste of running again and then nothing. So
Oh, that's the worst.
I'm trying to, as the weather keeps getting better and better, I keep thinking like I just want to get out there. So one more week and I'll be out there happily running. In the meantime, I'm walking a lot. And oh my God, are the cherry blossoms beautiful in Central Park?
I know. I'm missing them and I'm so sad about it. Ugh.
Yeah, it's
It's always
really,
like
really
the
nice.
sign that spring is finally here.
Yeah, it's really, really beautiful, and it won't last, so I'm taking them in as much as I can.
Yeah. I remember last year I went specifically to see them when they were blooming, and I was just like, "These it's just so beautiful."
Yeah, I as someone who did not grow up with seasons, I really enjoy this.
Okay, as somebody who grew up in Texas, Texas barely has seasons. Like, we have summer. We have summer down, it's figured out. And then fall and spring are kind of summer light,
Hmm,
and then winter is kind of like fall.
yeah.
Like, maybe. But, like, in New York, you have 4 full seasons.
Yep, yep. Except spring and fall really last like a week. So,
Yes, yes, 100%.
anyway,
'Cause especially spring, although also fall, but especially spring, because like, I feel like you get that nice moment of like, "Oh, it's so nice out, let me go, it's so pleasant,"
mhm,
to burning hot
right.
immediately.
So, speaking of spring, yesterday I had the chance, or well, when you're listening to this, it won't be yesterday, but as of when we're taping yesterday, I had the chance to host our remote and hybrid professionals community circle, which we do every month. And usually our host, Jess, will be there and guide the discussion. But she's in Australia. So I kind of stepped in, and it was really nice. And one of the questions I posed to the group, which I think can be a good one for our listeners to ponder on, is it's spring. Think of spring cleaning. What is one thing that you want to let go of to make room for something new? I've been thinking about that a lot. It's not an easy question, but I think there are many things that we don't necessarily reconsider. And I've had that in my mind for a few weeks now. Like what are the things that I need to reconsider? And it was great to hear what our people in the community circle had to say, and it reminds me that we're not alone. We all have something to let go of.
Yeah, I love that. I'm definitely gonna have to think about that because, like, I'm trying to think, like, if I had, like, a witty answer ready for the podcast, but I'm like, "No," because that's really something you kinda have to
Yeah,
think about.
it's a very hard question. And I felt like, oh, I put everyone on the spot, and we maybe didn't go into specific details, but it got us thinking. And I think that that's a lot of what we do at Ellevate is give that space for us to explore.
Yes, definitely. Speaking of which,
Right. Speaking of which,
yes,
what's
I
going on?
actually got yeah, I actually got some feedback from, our listeners when you were away, and it was just me doing the podcast. Apologies to anybody well, apologies to Catherine who had to hear me stumble through my script. But they actually, as it turned out, I that day did just intros, so I did the what's coming up at Elevate at the beginning of the episode. Turns out people actually really liked that. They were like, I like to just hear, what's going on at Elevate, what can I sign up for? What can I go on the website to look for like right away and then go into the interview rather than having to wait till the end?
Okay.
Which who am I to say no to our lovely listeners? So we have made that change and we're going to start giving you the updates on what's going on at Elevate at the beginning of the episode. So if you don't usually stick around for the end of the episode, you've been missing out on all the cool events that you can go to.
Sounds good to me. And definitely stick around because we do go through our history makers at the end of the episode, which is always really, really fun. But let's dive into it. What's going on at Elevate this week?
Yes, and we are gonna keep the history makers there, so don't worry, you'll still get that, like, dose of happiness at the end of your episode. Alright, so what is happening at Ellevate this week? Our Ellevate Roundtable is gonna be talking about honoring your past and current self to create your future, which is very on the topic of
Yes.
spring cleaning.
Very, very related to my pondering.
Yeah, I'm like, "Hello?" So, yeah, we're doing that. We're also doing our parents and caregivers community circle on Wednesday. Uh, I know Maricella was just talking about the remote and hybrid community circle. So, if you are a parent or a caregiver, you definitely want to come to this one. You'll get all kinds of just amazing, amazing support. So the roundtable is going to be on Thursday, and then the Parents and Caregivers Community Circle is going to be today on Wednesday.
And I wanna just take a minute to do a plug here. It's not this week, it's next week, but next Wednesday, May 3rd, we are doing our first community circle for professionals in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. As you probably know, as listeners of this podcast, this is a topic I am personally incredibly passionate about. So I'll be hosting those going forward on the first Wednesday of every month at 1 p.m. If you are passionate about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, if you work in that area, if you're part of your company's ERG, if you want to learn more about the topic and, how to bring that culture within your business, join us, because this is going to be a place where we can have some space to discuss the challenges we're facing when we deal with and when we are working towards DIB within companies, which can be an uphill battle sometimes. So come and fill your cup with us next Wednesday.
Yes, definitely. And so we're going to be doing that, which is going to be great. And that is also a hint. We've talked before about how, we have 7 total roundtables, but we are planning to introduce more. We now have 8 with the DEIB roundtable, but we are always taking suggestions for more, and we're planning them. It's just we have to find people to host them. So, which is, a process in itself. I know we've gotten, I can't promise which ones we're gonna, do anything, but I know that we've had some of our Jewish community members reach out specifically wanting a Jewish community circle. I know there's been a lot of talk about a disability community circle, which I would definitely be very into. So if you have a thought about a community circle that you think we should have, and even better, if you know an amazing host, send us your suggestion our way, because we want to host these spaces for people in our community.
Yep.
And finally, in terms of our events, we have some in-person events this week. Our Toronto chapter, if you are up in Toronto, is going to be hosting a Cocktail Connections chat on Wednesday. Our DFW chapter, which is where I am now, is going to be hosting their monthly happy hour also on Wednesday. I, as of right now, am 100% planning to go to this. We'll see if all the hecticness of life gets in the way, but I'm planning to go. So come see me there and just see some other kick butt ladies of the DFW community. Our Long Island chapter is hosting a happy hour at Revel, also on Wednesday. Our New York City chapter is hosting an executive fireside chat, which is a personal finance talk with industry leaders on Thursday. We've had a lot of personal finance inquiries lately, and so that's definitely something that we want to be talking about. Our Twin Cities chapter is going to be having a coffee and conversations on Thursday. And our Atlanta chapter is going to be hosting their book club, which this month is all about Atomic Habits. Big read, very, very popular. And that's going to be next Tuesday.
Yeah, still haven't read it.
I know, I have to read it. I have all of my books I have most of my books right now in like boxes because I had to move them. And it is somewhere in a box, and I will read it. By gosh.
Well, let me know how it goes. Well, thank you, Megan, for sharing what's going on at Ellevate. I hope to see you all at one of these events. Please come check out the community. It is a wonderful group of people. Trust me when I say that. I know I'm biased, but look, if it wasn't an incredible group of people, I would have not stuck around for 10 years. So take that as proof. 11 years, actually.
Yep.
Take that as proof. And speaking of great, incredible people, you are going to now listen to my interview with Krish O'Mara Vignarajah. She is so cool. She is the president and CEO of Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service. But before that, she was serving at the Obama White House as policy director for First Lady Michelle Obama, leading the signature Let Girls Learn initiative, and at the State Department as senior advisor under Secretaries of State Hillary Clinton and John Kerry. It was an honor to talk to Krish. She's fantastic. And I think the work she's doing is so important. And I am so excited for you all to get to know her. And of course, you can guess what my first question is, which is all about Michelle Obama, because
oh my God, yes.
It's Michelle Obama. So hope you enjoy.
Yes, definitely. Can't wait.
I'm very excited to be here with Krish O'Mara Vignarajah. Krish, I am very much looking forward to this conversation because as an immigrant, I've heard you speak quite a few times. I have followed some of the stuff you're working on, and I think there's a lot to unpack.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
First off, can you tell me a little bit of what brought you to the work you're doing today?
I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to lead the largest faith based national nonprofit exclusively dedicated to serving immigrants, Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service. And it came at a unique moment where, obviously, personally, my background is my parents left Sri Lanka when I was 9 months old and came to the US and Maryland. And I grew up living the immigrant experience without intentionally thinking about it or making a decision to come to the US.
Mhm.
And when I was approached at the end of 2018, it felt like the height of this war on immigration and immigrants. And so I feel really blessed to hopefully, pay it back, pay it forward in terms of my family getting such a warm welcome to come to the U.S. And for us, it was a game changer. It was a lifesaver, and I think for so many families, immigrants, it is as meaningful today as it was when we came in 1980.
Yeah, it is. And it's great that you can take your personal experience and pay it forward and work in a place that is so focused on this. But it was a long journey that brought you to where you are today.
Yeah,
Could you share a little bit about your background and how you got started?
yeah. So I knew I always wanted to go into public service. I think part of that is, my parents were both teachers and in the education field. They knew how lucky our family was that we were able to seek refuge here in the U.S. And so going through school and then entering into my career, I was really interested in public policy. So I
Mm,
spent a couple years practicing as a lawyer, then went into the Obama administration, served as senior advisor at the State Department under Secretary Clinton and Secretary Kerry, and then went to the White House to serve as Michelle Obama's policy director. Um, and it was, an incredible 5 years. I feel so grateful for the experience of working on a range of important issues. I certainly had spent a little bit of time focusing on immigration and refugee issues, but day to day, it was everything from um, Ebola in Africa to
mhm.
empowering girls to complete their educations rather than drop out. And it was a opportunity to, I hope, serve the country. When I came out, I was actually pregnant with uh, our daughter and thought I would finally get a little bit of rest and relaxation after a grueling 5 years in the Obama administration, and somehow got convinced to run for office. So I actually launched my campaign in the Maryland gubernatorial primary on my daughter's third-month birthday.
Oh,
I was the
wow.
only woman running in the field and actually announced the first policy, uh, was I wanted Maryland to be the first state in the nation to guarantee 3 months of paid family leave. And it was an interesting transition for me because 'cause I'd always been on the policy side, had
Mm,
never really been involved in politics. My mom took me door to door, knocking, and canvassing for, Senator Barbara Mikulski, but otherwise hadn't been involved in
mhm.
politics at all. And so it was a really wonderful opportunity, and it was after that a search firm approached me about the position with LIRS.
So many questions. I think one that everyone will have in their mind is Michelle Obama as great as we all think she is?
She is, she's uh, a a fierce and fearless leader. She was incredibly strategic in thinking about what issues are of national importance and yet not receiving the attention they deserve and need. And so I really enjoyed her focus on initiatives ranging from supporting our military families, making sure that more of our kids go to 2 and 4 year colleges,
Mhm.
raising our kids with more active and nutritious lifestyles, and then, of course, as I mentioned, Let Girls Learn, making sure that our middle and high school girls get to complete their educations. Um, but she was also just a lot of fun. She was willing to shake things up. Test conventional wisdom, and
Mhm.
really plot out her own path.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. I'm not gonna lie.
You and the rest of the world, it seems.
Yeah, yeah. So I had to ask. I just had to ask. Um, so you ran for office. Was that and like you were saying, this is not something that you had originally thought you were gonna do.
Yeah.
What what drove you to make that decision?
Yeah, it's a great question. Some might just chalk it up to hormones, and I was vulnerable to when folks started making the pitch. Um, I think some of it is just contextualizing it. I had left the administration, so this was the start. This was after the 2016 election, and
Mhm.
I think, like so many,
Yeah,
was shocked by the result and had some strong opinions on where I thought the country and where our political parties needed to go. And so, as I shared my thoughts through speeches and different, public engagement opportunities, people would come up to me and they'd say, "Well, why aren't you running for office?" And as I mentioned, in Maryland at the time, we had 8 candidates for governor for the Democratic primary, and not a single one was a woman. And, this was supposed to be 2018, right? So it was supposed to
Yeah.
be the year of the woman. And that seemed mind boggling to me that in a state as progressive,
yeah,
as diverse as Maryland, that you wouldn't have a set of candidates who better reflected our electorate. And I thought it was a little funny to think about running for office when you're pregnant with your first child, but I also knew that I felt so invested in the future, and I used to say that my daughter's life would be easier because my own parents' lives were hard. And to me, that's the American dream.
right.
And I do think in the last several years, I've questioned that assumption. Whether you're talking about the Supreme Court decision on women's bodily integrity and the ability to have choices, or just the strength of our democracy. Um,
Right.
I'd like to believe that we are always making forward progress, but there are definitely moments that give you pause. And so for me, it felt like an opportunity to speak out on issues I cared about, to try to make the world that my daughter was about to enter a slightly better place. And though I hated the dialing for dollars, the fundraising
Mhm.
piece, um, the rest of it I loved. And I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit it even today because, you sometimes wonder, does something have to be off in your wiring to put yourself out in the public, right? In such a fashion. But I really enjoyed campaigning. I'm glad that I did it.
And honestly, thank you for doing it. I think we need to get more women to know that they can and should
That's
run
right.
for
Yeah,
office. There's so much that we bring to the table, and we can't make progress if the community, the electorate, the population is not represented, and it's not right now.
that's exactly right. Yep.
So, thank you for doing that.
Oh, I appreciate that. Well, and especially for executive office, right? We're
Right.
we're definitely making more strides when it comes to legislative office, and yet there's still a hurdle to convincing the public that women should be viewed as CEOs, that women should be viewed um, as strong candidates for executive office.
Yeah, 100%. We are being discounted, and I think we do it to ourselves too. I'm not gonna lie.
Mhm.
I think there's an aspect of confidence, imposter syndrome, or even just like, nothing's gonna change. Why bother? Which I think is still out there. But the truth is, if we don't change it, yeah, nothing's gonna change.
That's right. Yeah.
Is the American dream dead?
Wow, that's that's a heavy one.
I'm
You just
sorry.
dove right in there. I appreciate that.
So, just because
Yeah.
when you started talking about it is when I thought of this question because it's true. And, I came to this country 12 years ago. I moved to go to school, to go to business school, and I, you know, followed my career. I was extremely privileged to move in the way that I did. But there are many, many people who come to this country or who even or are from this country and are hoping for a better life. And I don't know, is it possible?
Yeah, and I think the question is it the exception or is it the rule?
Right.
I sometimes tout the fascinating statistic that nearly half of Fortune 500 companies were founded by an immigrant or their child.
Oh,
That's pretty significant. But
yeah.
you also realize that it is not the typical experience.
Mhm.
It's not the typical experience for someone born here either. But in general, I would say I think the American dream is still alive and well. I can't tell you the number of people still today who we serve or partner with who say there is no country in the world where opportunity kind of exists um, as plentiful as it does here. But
Mm.
I think that is a subjective experience, and I think there are some folks who are lucky enough that they um, like you, like me, experience our country at its best, which is when we support our neighbors and we know that the rising tide lifts all boats, and when they
Mhm.
flourish, we flourish. Um,
Right.
but of course, you see these xenophobic and anti-immigrant uh, policies, these nativist policies that are incredibly exclusive and frankly, they uh, reflect a failure to appreciate our own interests. And you realize that we're getting in our own way. And
Mhm.
that's where I just think that us recognizing that unless uh, you um, are part of the indigenous community or your family was forced to come here um, through the slave trade, someone in your family made a decision to come to the U.S. and thank thank goodness for that. But I think somehow we've forgotten when we hear these narratives on the news today about fentanyl and immigration and
Mhm.
criminals, invading, coming across our southern border. We've forgotten that quote unquote they are us, right? They're just the newest
Yep.
generation of that.
That's I think, and I this is my opinion. This is part of the big issue that we see here, which is we fail to remember our history. What challenges are we facing when it comes to immigration? Because it seems to me, to be honest, like it's a lost cause. And I'm being very sarcastic and cynic on this topic because I I do believe that there are people like you who are working to create better policies to help, but it is something that's so in the hands of politicians that it's hard to fix.
Yeah, so I think I have to be an optimist. Otherwise, the work would be too hard. um,
Yeah, no.
but I still remain hopeful, and I think that is driven by a few factors. One is that I feel blessed that I do get to get out there, um, even at our, even in our border states, that are viewed as the front lines, you see strong, enthusiastic, passionate communities who undertake this work of welcome, and they put aside the politics and what pundits say, and they are committed to showing compassion and grace in the
Mhm.
work that we do. I think that the biggest barriers I see, um, one is kind of fiction versus fact. I think a lot of my work these days
Mm.
is myth busting because,
Ooh,
immigration is such a politicized issue right now, right?
right.
And so people have decided that this is a wedge issue and they don't want to actually come together and forge solutions, which is mind boggling because I've seen, based on my experience, the bulk of us share the same views,
Yeah,
right? There's only a fraction of folks who say we must have a completely open border or a completely closed border.
right.
Most of us believe that we need to have legal pathways. We need to make sure that only those who must come, by foot or whatnot, come to the southern border. But those who are coming for economic reasons should be granted a visa. Those who, are entitled to refugee status should, if they're able to remain in country, let them be processed that way so that they don't have to undertake these 1,000-mile treacherous journeys.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think that part of my concern is that you have people who are not actually well intentioned, who are not trying to get to solutions that are in political power. I think it relates to our earlier conversation.
Mhm.
I think a second barrier, as you said it, is forgetting our history. Just remembering that in many ways we are a nation of immigrants. And I think that a third concern is just understanding where our country and where similarly situated countries around the globe are. So, our demographics, if you look at where they are today and are headed, we're an inverted pyramid. We have the lowest birth rate since the census has been tracking this issue. We have an aging workforce. When we think about how do Medicare and Social Security stay afloat, part of it is
Yeah.
going to require immigration. When you think about the fact that we have 11 million jobs that are unfilled and only, 5 or 6 million Americans who could fill those jobs, you realize that essentially half of our jobs right now are going to go unfilled. The math just doesn't add up unless immigration is a part of the solution. You look at Japan and an economy that's gone stagnant because they have more adult diapers than they have baby diapers, or China that's gone from enforcing a one child policy to encouraging two children to now encouraging three children. You just realize that many Western nations are going to have to fix the immigration system or we're going to decline. And I think that's where explaining to the American public that America remaining a superpower requires us to have better immigration policies that are more inviting and more aligned with our self interest.
That is wild. So I didn't know. I knew that we were facing an issue with the birth rate and that that's kind of going on in many of the developed nations or developing nations. But the idea that half of the jobs will go unfilled if we don't fix this problem in a way, or if we don't, bring people who are qualified, who can do things in to fill those jobs, is a very different way of thinking of this as a problem, but as an opportunity.
That's right. I mean, and this is where, my background academically is international relations, political science. I think that the next arms race is less a national security one about, military might and more a literal one about how can we attract the vibrancy that immigration represents,
Yeah.
in terms of the advantage we have over so many other countries, which is tragically people still risk their lives to come here, right? We are
Mhm.
still viewed as that shining city on a hill. And so rather than closing our doors and saying, oh no, this is a weakness of the nation, we need to think about it as a strength and a necessity.
Absolutely. And it's, it's interesting. It seems like it's a, it's a, I don't want to say a war on talent, but like a
Yeah,
way, like this brain melting of different perspectives that we see as valuable in business. If you think about it, we talk about how diversity increases ROI. So if you think about it as a whole nation, I mean, there's a huge opportunity.
that's right.
How do you get this message out there?
Yeah, that's the hard
That's
part,
the question.
right? Because there's so much noise. There are
Right.
so many competing narratives out there. And I think some of this is the dynamic of you have one side that wants to scapegoat
Mhm.
and blame all of the problems that Americans who've felt left behind that they face on immigrants. Um, you have, just the horrors of the opioid epidemic
Right.
and the fentanyl being again blamed on immigrants, even though less than 1% uh, come into the country, through immigrants. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
really such a tragedy because on the other side, it seems like people are nervous to even talk about the issue. And so
Mhm.
I don't know if this is political strategy or just an oversight, but it feels like there's a unwillingness to provide a full-throated defense, and instead, it seems a strategy of if we don't talk about it, it'll go away, and that's obviously a losing strategy. So for us, it is trying to provide um, explanation, trying to uh, set out values that bring us together, and then actually putting solutions out there, right? Like our point is that we can fix the system if we revamp our humanitarian system so that we have a functioning refugee resettlement and asylum system.
Mhm.
If we uh, don't undermine ourselves by not having the economic visas we need, um, and
Yeah, that's the
actually,
biggest fear.
right, like working with companies, whether it's tech, whether it's agriculture, whether it's hospitality, whether it's hospitals, to know that immigrants have to be a part of how we, employ. Um, and then also thinking about other issues like family reunification. It's just not right when you think about how that's such a core American value of
Yeah.
family unity. And yet, so many families are out there waiting for visas for 2, 3 decades. I mean, that's essentially a lifetime for so
Yeah.
many families.
Yeah, I know several people who have been in that spot. And I, personally, when you talk about the work visas, like that's a massive opportunity. There's a very, very limited amount of work visas that are given out. I like for the demand and for the opportunity. I remember going through that process and it was pain.
And it's, Jamie Dimon said this at the Harvard Business School commencement. We should staple a green card to every single diploma
Yeah.
we issue, right? There's talent. We've invested in educating
Mhm.
this talent, and the idea of not making it the easiest thing for these individuals to go on to successful careers, to be entrepreneurs, to build businesses, to create jobs. It's just undermining our own self interest.
Absolutely. 100%. I had not heard that and I definitely agree on that. So tell me a little bit about what you are doing at the Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service. And I think kind of I want to hear a little bit about the work you're doing more specifically. And on the other side, I do have a question because you did mention companies. What can individuals and companies do in when it comes to such a topic that is so feels so massive?
We're really proud of the work that we do at Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service to support everyone from refugees through our resettlement program, asylum seekers, by helping them through welcome centers that we have in different parts of the country. We have a particular expertise when it comes to kids. It's why in
Mm.
2018, during the family separation crisis, we were one of the two organizations the federal government turned to reunify kids with their parents. But we're one of the two agencies that works with unaccompanied refugee minors. We help a significant number of the unaccompanied kids and their sponsors. Who enter the U.S. Every day. But we're also excited about our work on advocacy, everything from advocating for our Afghan allies to how do we address climate displacement, knowing that it
Mm.
is going to be the reason why a majority of people migrate um, today, if not certainly in the future. Um, I do appreciate the question on what can companies do because when I give speeches across the country and I'm asked that question, I say the honestly the best thing or one of the best things you could do is hire one of our clients. For our clients, it is their way of getting to self sufficiency and achieving what they themselves want and they ask. Even in their very first question of conversations, they say, I want a job. I want to support
Right.
myself, my family. And we're a charitable organization, but it is not charity to hire them because they are reliable, they're driven, some of them come with skills. If they don't come with skills, they come with a passion to learn.
Mhm.
And I regularly hear back from companies, from CEOs who say, please, can we hire more? Please, how can
I
we
love that.
work with more of your clients? And yeah, it is refreshing feedback. I think, for companies, we have some really great partnerships. We have a preferred, a preferred refugee employer program where we work with companies to indicate what clients need. And if companies uh, kind of sign up for 5 of the 15 best practices, they get sort of a good housekeeping seal of approval in
Oh,
terms of them being a preferred employer. We've had some really great partnerships with companies from Starbucks to Walmart on refugee youth career pathways, on upskilling. And right now, we're actually looking to launch a staffing firm, just knowing that employment services are how we economically empower our clients and American communities.
I love that. That's a great idea.
Thank you. We're excited.
And you like you said, it's not charity, right?
Right.
Hiring people who come with the passion and the desire. You will not find anyone, I don't think, who is as driven as someone who's risked so much just to be here.
Hmm.
Like if that's not a committed person, I don't know what is.
Yeah, that's right.
Like really.
Yep.
I do want to address this because you mentioned it and that you work quite a lot with kids and family separation. And you've mentioned the 2018 crisis, but yes, that was like a moment in time where it was horrifying. How much has it improved?
Yeah, I mean, it's a timely question because obviously in the
Mhm.
news we're seeing um, what unfortunately is a perpetual problem of the exploitation of children, child labor, just making sure that children are not trafficked, and certainly just the employment dynamics we were touching on a few minutes ago highlight the need that companies are um, uh, filling, but by you know exploiting children, it's un-American and it's illegal, and there's obviously a real grave concern we have to protect these children, especially as their parents are fearing that though they may not be able to come to the U.S., that perhaps sending a child who could have a chance at I guess you could call it the American dream, but then it of course turns into a disaster and a tragedy. I think even in terms of the family separation crisis, it's sad when you think about families that for years now have been separated and there's no end in
Mhm.
sight. We've been grateful to the administration that has emphasized how important it is to reunite these children with their parents. Um, but we also know that for hundreds of kids, that's not a prospect that we see on the horizon. Um, and I think thankfully there is consensus that children should not be used as bait for immigration enforcement, and they
Mhm.
should not be used as a deterrence policy. But I still think we have our work cut out for us in terms of protecting these kids.
Yeah, I noticed a Twitter thread you had posted, and the power of storytelling, I think, makes it more human
Yeah.
when you see like the story of one of the actual kids or one of the actual people who are going through this. And I encourage people to follow Krish on Twitter because she does share some really great information.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. It's part
Yeah,
of
I was watching your videos and reading the thread, and I'm like, oh my god, it just I'm a huge believer in storytelling,
yeah,
and I think that humanizing the situation, like actually understanding that we're talking about people when we talk about these issues, is should or could potentially um, close the divide a little bit.
yeah, exactly. Thank you. And that's where we hope that if we can fight fiction with fact, our
Hmm.
country will be better for it.
Yeah, I hope so too. Thank you, Krish.
Thank you for having this conversation. Really appreciate it.
Well, we can go now to our lightning round. Some fun questions, nothing too serious. So we can start with, if you could time travel, where is the first place you would go?
Oh gosh. Uh,
I led with a hard one.
yeah, you did ask a hard one. It's funny. It's a little personal, but I hear so much from my parents about their childhood and growing up in a country that used to be described as the Tahiti of the East or the Pearl of the Indian Ocean. They grew up in Sri Lanka, and that's actually where I was born. And certainly from my experiences of going back to a war torn country to today following, the economic crisis, it's really difficult for me to imagine. And so when I
Yeah.
hear these stories about my parents wearing their, sunglasses and hopping on their motorcycle and going to the beach, um, part of it is shocking because I'm like, were my parents actually cool? And then part of it is, just imagining a country that really was so beautiful. But I never got to see that. I would love to just get a glimpse of that life that they lived and why they think so, poignantly and there's such a wistfulness when they think about the country they knew.
I love that so much. You have no idea. Thank you for sharing
Oh,
that.
thanks.
If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Oh gosh, I think it would be time.
Mm.
It's the tough part of being a CEO, being a mom to a young daughter. Um, I think I appreciated how valuable time was and how short it is. When I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2020, and I felt like I was so young, and I it it was so shocking. And thankfully, all is well. I feel so grateful for the medical care I got, but it did make me appreciate that that was the most valuable resource and commodity that we have.
Thank you for sharing that, Krish. Let's see. Most used app on your phone.
Definitely text message in a way that I sometimes wonder, oh, I should really just pick up the phone. But I feel like the dynamics these days is you pick it up and people will be like, why are you calling? Is everything okay?
Yes.
You know? But besides that, I definitely, around this time of the year, um, the winter weighs on me. I think it's the tropical blood of being born in
Yeah,
Sri
I
Lanka
feel you.
that I miss the warm weather. I'm constantly waiting for when it's going to be over 55 or 60 so I can get out. I can get the family out and do some sports or a fun physical activity. So right now I'm tracking the weather very closely.
I feel you so. I can relate so much to that. Every winter, I'm like, why do I live here?
Yes. And then I'm envious of these people who, are lucky enough that they can, winter somewhere and summer elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that would be nice.
Yeah. Uh, Best piece of advice you've ever been given.
I think it would be from my dad, who would say that, the the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. So I think there's always kind of this, I wish I had, um, but because I think life's too short, it makes me understand the urgency of it's never too late.
Mm,
And so I really appreciate that, because rather than being caught up by regret and looking back into the past, it's a very forward looking approach,
I like
that
that.
I've been grateful for. Yeah.
That's very, very nice. And finally, what's one thought you'd want to leave with our listeners?
I don't know how inspiring this is, but I feel like it's been helpful to me. Um, the idea of faking it till you make it, fake it till you make it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think even today, once in a while, I'll have self doubt. I'll wonder if um, I'm up to the task. And I realize that that really doesn't ever go away, but that those doubts that nag at you are really, they're from within. And so I always try to encourage, my own daughters, uh, women that I mentor, especially. You got to fake it till you make it, and you will.
Yeah,
But you've
you will.
gotta lean into it, right? Rather than just fearfully step away.
Yeah, you have to believe.
Right.
Thank you, Krish. This was lots of fun. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here today.
Oh, I'm so grateful for the opportunity. Thanks for having me.
Cool. So we're back. Hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Probably not as much as I did because I got to do it, but I
I
hope.
know. She's so cool. And I actually saw her. I Listeners in the past will know this because I mentioned this before. My favorite news program is PBS NewsHour. Um, Me and all the other people that go to bed at like 8 p.m. because it comes on at like 5. But I love PBS NewsHour. It is 1 hour of just like unbiased, thoughtful news presented by PBS. It's wonderful. Just lets you know what you need to know in the world. She was actually on PBS NewsHour a few weeks ago, and I was like geeking out because I was like, she's gonna be on the podcast, and she's on PBS NewsHour, and she's talking to like my favorite reporters, and like I was like, oh my god,
Yeah, she's really cool.
yeah. So that's my geek out moment. Was I was like, you're like, you talked to Michelle Obama, who I love. Let's be clear here, love Michelle Obama, but I'm like, oh my god, you talked to Amna Nawaz.
Very, very cool. She's great. Speaking of other great people, want to do our history makers?
Absolutely. Let's get it started with Erica Mule, became the first woman president of Berklee College of Music.
Again, we've been seeing so many strides happening in academia. I love it so much.
Yes.
Peggy Whitson will become the first woman commander of a private space mission.
Tamia Potter became Vanderbilt University's first Black woman neurosurgery resident.
Really, really great for her. Why has it taken so long?
That's what I was like, amazing for her, but I was also like, how?
Yeah. Kathy Bosman became the first woman to serve as Omaha's fire chief.
Sheldon Barr became the first woman president of VCU Health Community Memorial Hospital.
And last but not least, Carrie Masters became the first woman CEO of Phoenix-based nonprofit St. Joseph the Worker. So congratulations to our history makers.
Congratulations to everybody this week.
Yeah, and speaking of celebrating people who are doing awesome things, just wanted to let you know we are hosting our Mobilize Women Summit on June 7th. It's free. It's online. Go to elevatenetwork.com/summit to sign up and get your ticket. We will be having tons of discussions around topics that are really, really important, like the caregiving crisis, like gender equity and climate change, like how do we make workplaces more human. We have incredible speakers lined up that will just make the conversation so rich. And the night before, if you're in New York City, we're going to be hosting our Mobilize Women awards and cocktail reception to kick off the summit. It is going to be a night, honestly, to remember. It will be a celebration of incredible change makers and a chance for you to talk to other executives who are creating change within their organizations, but also hear from our awardees as international women of change. I can't say who they are yet,
I
but
know. I'm literally sitting here basically just freaking out. We can't say who they are yet. But just know that we had one confirmed the other day who's like, yeah, absolutely, I would love to. And I'm very, very, very excited about her.
yeah, we have some great people, and I cannot wait to share with you who they are. But just know that they're going to be wonderful, and that the people who are going to be in the room will also be wonderful. So hope you can
Yes.
make it. You can find details at ellevatenetwork.com.
Yeah, absolutely. And go straight there, and you can just look for Mobilize Women. Be sure to sign up for our other events in the lead up too, because like we don't just do Mobilize Women. We do so many events year round that are all about exactly what we talk about at Mobilize Women.
Absolutely. And that's what our community circles are for too. So check those out.
Yes, definitely.
And next week, you will hear my conversation with Jennifer Carlson, who is the co-founder and executive director of Apprenti, the nation's first registered tech apprenticeship program. So I didn't know much about apprenticeship programs. So it was really, really enlightening for me to talk to Jennifer, hear what she's doing, how she's working with companies to upskill people who are seeking jobs in technology, but are looking for a non-traditional route to do that. There is a lot of challenges when it comes to job seekers who have not gone through a traditional college setting. And there's a lot of talent that's being left on the table. So this is incredible what she's doing. It's providing economic mobility to groups that are underrepresented, particularly in the tech world. So if you're interested in tech, if you're interested in creating more equitable workplaces and opportunities for people who might not have had them before, please listen in next week.
Definitely. I cannot wait to hear this one.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, I think so. Have a great week, everyone.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Ellevate Network drives real results for ambitious women trying to break through the glass ceiling and achieve success in their careers. We offer a platform full of resources and opportunities for growth, all designed to help you unlock your potential. With Ellevate support, you can take the first step toward achieving your professional goals. With a supportive community and tangible resources at your fingertips, you're only one step away from reaching your fullest potential. Join us today and take advantage of our 30-day free trial to start building the career of your dreams. Thanks so much for listening to the Ellevate podcast. If you like what you hear, you can subscribe, give us 5 stars, and share your review. You can learn all about Ellevate membership and all the great things that Ellevate Network is doing at our website, www.ellevatenetwork.com. That's ELLEVATE network.com. And special thanks to our producer, Catherine Heller. She rocks. Thanks so much, and join us next week.